A spark in the dust. The engine roared like a dying beast before sputtering into silence, its final breath echoing across the dusty plain. Kasha Vale didn't look up from the half-dismantled drone on her bench. She knew the sound. Another desperate soul had limped in a broken halo, and they'd want something, fuel, parts, maybe a patch job on a patched-together hoverbike. It didn't matter. She wasn't in the business of saving people, just machines. The wind kicked up powdered rust outside her garage, stirring the chimes she made from stripped engine coils. Kasha wiped sweat from her brow, tucked a loose strand of copper-red hair beneath her scarf, and focused on the cracked logic board in front of her. Then came a knock. 3 sharp raps. Not the tentative tap of a scavenger or the rhythmic code of a local. This knock was confident. Bold. Trouble. Closed, she called without looking. The door creaked, open anyway. She sighed and turned. He stood in the doorway like a ghost carved from war. Tall, lean, coated in road dust and blood. One hand clutched his side, dark crimson spreading through the fabric. His coat was armored leather, reinforced with plated scrap metal, and slung across his back was a rifle older than the settlement itself. Got coin, he said, voice rough like gravel. Need a mechanic. Kasha narrowed her eyes. You also need a doctor. Already had one. He died 2 towns back. She stepped forward slowly. Sit there. Don't bleed on my stabilizer coils. He managed a smirk before collapsing into the chair beside her bench. She worked quickly, hands steady despite the heat and tension. Underneath the grime and blood, he wasn't just another gunman. There was precision in his movements, calculation in his eyes. He watched her more than he winced. Name's Jax, he muttered through gritted teeth. I didn't ask, but you'll want it, he said, his grin more alive now. Most folks do, so they can tell stories later. Kasha arched an eyebrow. You think I care about stories? I think you're too good to be wasting talent on salvage scrap in a dead-end town. That made her pause, just long enough for him to notice. She tightened the bandage around his ribs, maybe a bit harder than necessary. You've got a busted fuel regulator and a cracked capacitor, and something burned out half your NAV drive. Must have pissed off the wrong people. I usually do. Kasha turned back to his bike, eyes scanning the damage. It was a beast of a machine, military-grade frame, jury-rigged with Outlaw tech. Scarred, scorched, but beautiful in its defiance. Like him, outside the wind shifted. Something prickled at the back of her neck. She glanced toward the open doorway, just in time to see movement in the distance. Figures approaching, dust shadows with purpose. You bring company? She snapped. Jax was already standing, pain forgotten. Didn't mean to. They moved fast. Kasha cursed and grabbed the plasma cutter from her belt. Those gang types. Bounty hunters, he said, checking his rifle. Big payout for me. Bigger if I'm still breathing. She considered throwing him out. Let the stars take him. She didn't need more blood on her floor. But her eyes flicked to the children's medkit he'd dropped when he walked in. Government issue. Not stolen. Not for him. He saw her looking. Free to transport full of them last week. Guess someone noticed. Kasha grit her teeth. She didn't believe in causes. Not anymore. But something about that answer, the raw honesty of it, hit her harder than it should have. The bounty hunters came fast. Blasters humming. She and Jax fought back to back. Her tools turned weapons, his aim deadly and precise. When it was done, her shop was scorched, her hands shaking, and 2 bodies smoldered in the street. Jax holstered his rifle. Thanks for the assist, he said. I'll be gone before sunrise. Kasha glared at the wreckage around them. Damn right you will. But later, as she swept debris from her doorway and stared at the stars above, her fingers brushed the chain around her neck, a small star map pendant. A piece of her brother's past. A reminder. And in her mind, the outlaw's voice echoed. You're too good to be wasting talent on salvage scrap. She looked back at the half-repaired hoverbike, still cooling on her platform. Trouble had come, and it had Jack's Corvin smile. And, somehow, she wasn't entirely sure she wanted it to leave. Steel can't mend what's broken. By morning, the wind had carried away the scent of plasma fire, but not the damage. Kasha stood silently at the threshold of her scorched workshop, boots crunching on broken glass. A cracked solar panel drooped like a wounded wing, and a charred wall bore the melted imprint of a bounty hunter's thermal charge. Jax Corvin was gone, just like he promised. But so were 3 fusion couplers, a data slate, and her one remaining quantum welder. Son of a, she clenched her jaw. He hadn't just brought trouble. He'd stolen from her. Again, it didn't take long to find his trail. Velker, 7 might have no law, but it had whispers. In Broken Halo, word of a fast hoverbike and a bleeding outlaw pass faster than a credit chip. Someone saw him riding east, toward the ruins of the old orbital rail tunnel, a relic from when this moon had hope and promises. Kasha gunned her own bike across the cracked flats, rage curling in her chest like a power core ready to blow. She found it by dusk. Jax was huddled beneath the rusted arch of the tunnel, patching an NAV transponder with one of her stolen couplers. His head snapped up the moment he heard her engine. "You've got some nerve," she snapped, dismounting. That welder wasn't cheap. He raised his hands. "Didn't think you'd miss it. You said I'd be gone before sunrise. That doesn't mean you get to loot my shop like a corpse." He grinned sheepishly, leaning on a tool rack made of repurposed drone legs. "I figured you'd come after me. I should gut you. But you didn't. You followed me instead." His tone shifted, softer, almost sincere. "Because you want to know why." Kasha crossed her arms. "I already know why. You're a thief." He stepped forward, wincing from the wound still healing beneath his coat. "I stole those parts for a reason. I've got one shot at something bigger than running." She didn't reply. Jax crouched beside a battered crate and flipped open a holomap. It projected a convoy route through the canyon passes, a series of blinking red dots marked with slave tags. Kasha recognized the signature instantly. Jindine Slaver Corps. "Corporate filth. They're moving children again," he said. "Same as last time. You want to take on a Jindine convoy? That's suicide. Only if I go alone." He looked at her directly now. "You've got the skills. I've got the guns. Together, we can break them." Kasha felt her breath catch. Part of her wanted to walk away, wanted to ride back to her broken shop and pretend this had nothing to do with her. She wasn't a hero. Not anymore. But her fingers brushed the star map pendant at her neck again. Her brother had died in a fire not unlike the one Jax had pulled her into. Blamed by the corporations. Forgotten by Earth. No one had saved him. "No killing unless we have to," she said finally. Jax nodded. "Deal." They spent the night planning. Kasha reprogrammed a drone swarm to cause an electromagnetic burst just as the convoy hit the canyon. Jax checked his weapons in silence, eyes distant. She caught him watching her once. Just once, when she thought he wasn't looking. The ambush came at dawn. The EM pulse hit perfectly, frying the convoy's NAV systems. Kasha's custom mines funneled the transports into a natural choke point, where Jax struck fast and hard. Blaster fire lit up the canyon like a festival gone wrong. Kasha hacked the slaver drones mid-battle, turning their auto turrets against their owners. Children screamed inside containment pods until she cracked them open. And then it was over. Bodies cooling on the stone. Sunlight rising through smoke. She found Jax kneeling beside a boy with tangled hair and haunted eyes. "You did good," she said softly. "So did you." He stood. Blood trickled from a graze on his cheek, but he smiled. "Told you we made a good team." Kasha looked at him, heart thudding too loud. "Why me, Jax? Why drag me into this?" He didn't answer right away. Then he said, "Because when I saw you under that scorched shop light, working with hands steadier than any outlaw's trigger finger, I knew you were the only one who still gave a damn." She looked away, but for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone in the dust and rust of this broken moon. Love is the law I never learned. The sun sank behind the red cliffs, casting long shadows over Broken Halo as Kasha returned to her shop. The front half was still a mess from the bounty hunter skirmish, but the back room, her refuge, remained intact. Jax had followed her in silence, his steps light despite his injuries. He helped her lift the collapsed scaffolding, carried scrap like he belonged there, like he wasn't one of the most wanted outlaws in 3 sectors. "You don't have to do this," she said, dropping a toolbox with a clang. "Fixing what you broke." He shrugged. Seems fair. Kasha glanced at him, dirt-streaked, half-healed, but alive, still watching her like she was something rare. It made her stomach twist in ways she hadn't felt in years. "You always help people by blowing things up?" she asked. "Only when they're slavers." He grinned. "Or corporations. Or bounty hunters." Charming. That night he stayed. Not because she asked, she didn't, but because she didn't tell him to leave. They sat in the back room, surrounded by spare parts and silence. She tinkered with a faulty microprocessor while he sipped water, wincing each time he moved. Eventually, the quiet cracked. "You from Earth?" he asked. Kasha nodded without looking up. "Originally. Grew up in one of the orbital colonies outside Oslo 3. You don't talk like a core worlder." "I stopped a long time ago." He waited, respectful. "I was an engineer for Orion Dynamics. High clearance tech. My brother too. We were working on power grid extensions for the outer colonies. Then one day, a reactor failed. Explosion took the entire team." She paused. "They blamed him. Said he cut corners. He didn't. But they needed a scapegoat, and he was convenient. I tried to fight back. Lost everything in the process. Jax didn't speak. I left. Disappeared. Built a new life where no one would care who I used to be." When she looked up, he wasn't pitying her. His jaw was tight, eyes shadowed. "They tried to erase my squad too," he said. "We were supposed to secure a rebel-controlled research station. Turned out it was full of civilians. Scientists. Kids." Kasha stared. "We refused to fire. They sent in drones. Burned the place. Claimed we disobeyed orders. Those of us who lived got court-martialed. I escaped before sentencing. And became the infamous Jax Corvin," she murmured. "I didn't want revenge. I just couldn't let them keep doing it. So I started hitting their supply lines. Cracking transport codes. Taking back what they steal." He leaned forward, voice low. "I've never told anyone that." Kasha blinked. Her hands trembled slightly, and she dropped the processor. He caught it before it hit the ground. Their fingers brushed. Silence again, but not the uncomfortable kind. The kind that crackled. "You don't have to stay broken, Cass," he said softly. Her breath caught. He stood slowly, uncertain. "I should sleep." She didn't move. "Unless." Kasha kissed him. It wasn't gentle. It wasn't careful. It was fire meeting steel, two people who had been hardened by loss, finally letting something else in. When they pulled apart, her forehead rested against his. "Don't make me regret this," she whispered. "I won't," he breathed. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the half-melted skylight. Jax was already up, sipping reclaimed coffee and watching her tinker with a motor core. Kasha smirked. "Didn't think you'd still be here. Didn't think you'd let me." She didn't answer. Before either of them could speak again, a knock shattered the quiet. Kasha froze. Jax was already reaching for his weapon. A shadow appeared at the door. Marshal Doran Vex, tall, armored in black ceramic plating, badge gleaming like a death warrant. "I don't want to fight," Vex said. "Just a word with the lady." Kasha stepped forward slowly. "What do you want?" The marshal's eyes flicked toward Jax. "Word is you've been harboring a fugitive. Word is someone in town's ready to sell him out." Her blood ran cold. Jax didn't move, but she saw it in his face, the calculation. The way his body tensed like a man preparing to run. Not out of cowardice. To protect her. Kasha's heart pounded. "No one's here but me." Vex tilted his head. "Shame. Could have used that bounty payout." He left. And just like that, the walls they'd started to tear down returned. Kasha turned slowly. "You were going to run," she said. "I won't put a target on your back. It's already there, Jax." He looked away. She stepped forward, grabbed his hand. "I chose this. I chose you." He didn't speak, but she saw it in his eyes. The same fear she felt. Not of death. Of losing something they never expected to find. Starlight doesn't run. The trap snapped shut before dawn. Kasha was at her workbench when the stun charge detonated. Just a pulse, but enough to throw her across the floor. She hit the ground hard, ears ringing, vision dancing with sparks. Through the haze, she saw the shop door burst open. Marshal Doran Vex stepped in, flanked by two corporate enforcers in black armor. They weren't here for negotiations. Jax lunged from the back room, blaster drawn, but Vex was faster. The plasma bolt struck Jack square in the chest. He crumpled. Kasia screamed. They dragged her outside, zip-tied her wrists, and threw her to the ground next to Jax's body. Dust swirled in the cold morning light. Her heart thudded so loud she couldn't hear the guards' voices. But then Jax moved, groaning. Alive. The marshal crouched beside him. Still breathing? Good. You're worth more that way. Kasia struggled against the bonds. He saved children. He fought slavers. You're arresting the wrong man. Vex didn't look at her. We don't care what he did. Just what he's worth. They loaded Jax onto a transport skiff and stunned him again. Kasia was tossed into a separate cage, the door clanging shut behind her. As the skiff lifted into the morning sky, she looked through the bars and caught one last glimpse of Jax's face. Unconscious, pale, still breathing. They didn't kill him, but they would. Kasia knew the kind of justice the corporation served. Jax wouldn't make it off Velker, 7 alive, not unless she stopped them. 2 days passed. Kasia was released with a warning and a fine, obstruction of justice, harboring a fugitive. Vex had gotten what he wanted. They thought she was broken again. Alone. They were wrong. Kasia pulled out her old transmitter from behind the fuel rack and flipped open her encrypted contacts. Not many answered, but some did. Children they'd saved. Minors Jax had once defended. A few outlaws who still had debts to settle. In 48 hours, she had a plan, a route, and an army of misfits with nothing to lose. The prison skiff made one stop before leaving the moon, a secret orbital launch pad carved into the Velker canyons, used by corporations to move high-value assets off-world. Kasia was already waiting. The canyon winds howled as she crouched behind a supply drone with her plasma cutter powered up. Across the clearing, guards unloaded Jax, chained, bleeding, barely conscious. She pressed the comm link in her ear. Ready. From above, a child's voice crackled back. On your mark, Miss Kasia. Kasia's fingers trembled. Now! Everything erupted. Smoke bombs. Flash grenades. Repurposed mining bots rolling into formation. Screams and blaster fire echoed off the canyon walls. One of the guards tried a radio for help, then took a wrench to the face, courtesy of a 70-year-old ex-miner with a grudge. Kasia rushed forward, dodging fire, cutting through chains with her plasma blade. Jax was on his knees, dazed. Cass, he croaked. What are you? Rescuing you, she snapped. So don't die. She hauled him to his feet, slinging his arm over her shoulder. We got a ship waiting. Move. They stumbled through chaos, bodies, smoke, the sound of revenge in every scream. When they reached the launch platform, a stolen courier vessel sat humming, hatch open. Kasia helped Jax inside. She turned to close the door and found herself face to face with Marshal Vex. He raised his blaster, but Kasia raised her cutter. The heat flared, slicing through the barrel of his weapon before he could fire. She didn't hesitate. One blow to the chest sent him sprawling. Stay down, she hissed, and she shut the hatch. The stars unfolded before them as the ship broke atmosphere. Jax lay in the med cot, eyes half-lidded, bruised and bleeding, but alive. Kasia leaned over him. Still with me? Barely. You owe me a welder, she said, brushing dust from his cheek. He smiled weakly. I owe you a galaxy. She sat beside him, her fingers laced with his. Silence settled around them, gentler this time. Where are we going? He asked. Kasia looked out the viewport at the sea of stars ahead. Endless. Open. Where they can't find us. Where we make our own rules. He closed his eyes. That a promise? She squeezed his hand. It's Starlight, Jax. It doesn't break. Final lines. They called him an outlaw. They call me broken. But between the steel and the Starlight, we found something real. And for the first time in years, I chose to run towards something. Not away.